Dispute involving cruise ship passengers. Complaints received by the Consumer Council hit a 4-year high, and concern about explosives hidden in toothpaste tubes at the Winter Olympics.
Good evening. A group of cruise passengers has refused to get off their ship after it returned to Hong Kong this morning. They are angry that they could not disembark at Halong Bay in Vietnam. The cruise company explained that a sunken vessel there made it unsafe for the passengers to leave the ship. Our Joelle De Silva is standing by in Chim Sa Choi to tell us more. Joelle, what's going on there?
Hi, Sonia. As you can see behind me, some disgruntled passengers remain on the top floors of the ship, while on the second and third floor are passengers who boarded the ship this afternoon and who were supposed to have departed towards Singapore at 3 p.m. As a matter of fact, it's been quite surreal throughout the day, with the passengers on the top floors shouting and expressing their dissatisfaction to the media over here at the top floor of the Ocean Terminal, while the other passengers, the ones that were supposed to depart towards Singapore this afternoon, were boarding the ship. Let's have a look. The Costa Victoria returned to Hong Kong early this morning, carrying more than 2,000 guests. We want compensation, some shouted. We didn't get what we paid for, they complained. Among the passengers is legislator An Chiang, who said they want answers from the travel agency and the shipping company. We spoke to one of the passengers on the phone.
The compensation quite minimal. I think for the tour on Halong Bay, normally it's around $100 but what they compensated us was around $350 for adults and like 200 something for kids.
The Halong Bay leg of the trip was meant to take up about 4 hours of the 6-day, 5-night holiday. They set sail from Hong Kong last Saturday, went to Sanya in Hainan Island, then on to Da Nang and Halong Bay in Vietnam. When the ship arrived at Halong Bay, port authorities there told them a barge had sunk in the area and the Costa Victoria could not anchor for safety reasons. Many of the passengers disembarked when the ship arrived in Hong Kong, but some refused to get off and demanded talks with Miramar Travel, the agency with which they booked their holiday. Some are demanding compensation up to 70% of what they paid for the entire trip. They complained that there was no food or drinks on the ship after it anchored in Hong Kong, and after some heated argument, the shipping company then provided what they needed.
Miramar Travel and the cruise company, we pay back the expenditures that we used to offer to the clients, that is for the land tour, the 4 hours tour on the Halong Bay, and convert to Hong Kong dollars, it could be per person around 343 Hong Kong dollars per person, something like that.
The Travel Industry Council tried to mediate. Chairman Michael Wu explained that the passengers argued that there were 3 destinations on their trip, and since they didn't make it to one of them, they demand 1/3 of their money back.
So far, some of them have understand, and then they agree for our stepping in and arrange a meeting tomorrow afternoon to negotiate between Miramar Travel and the passenger to seek a compromising situation.
As I said before, of the 2,000 passengers who arrived from Vietnam this morning, 100 passengers remain on the ship, refusing to leave. It remains to be seen when the ship will be allowed to depart to Singapore, as it was supposed to have departed at 3 p.m. today. The executive director of the Travel Industry Council told me that tomorrow a meeting between the passengers who have agreed to leave the ship and the travel agent, Miramar Travel, will take place tomorrow afternoon. That's all from me. Back to you in the studio.
Excellent work, Joelle. That was our Joelle De Silva reporting live from Chim Sa Choi. To other news now. The Consumer Council received more than 30,000 complaints last year. That's the highest number in 4 years' time. And complaints relating to baby milk formula nearly tripled. As Stephanie Choi reports, the watchdog has voiced support for a 2-can export limit to stay in place.
The Consumer Council received 310 complaints about infant formula in 2013, up from 105 the year before.
In the beginning of last year, because there was concern about the shortage of milk powders, and a lot of people are shipping milk powder across the border. So the government exercised this new law to inhibit people from shipping milk powder across the border to mainland. And after that, from I think February last year, the complaints dropped significantly.
But the watchdog's chairman pointed out the number of complaints began to increase again later in the year in the run-up to the Lunar New Year holiday. He believes the government's 2-can export limit remains necessary.
Wong says the best solution to solving the shortage of infant formula is increasing its supply. He adds encouraging breastfeeding may also be an option.
That's the situation.
Of the 30,006 complaints the Consumer Council received last year, telecommunication services accounted for the highest number at more than 6,400. Other complaints were related to, for example, telecommunication devices, electrical appliances, furniture and fixtures, as well as tourism-related matters. With the amended Trade Descriptions Ordinance taking effect last year, the Council saw a 6% increase in the number of complaints regarding undesirable sales practices. The Council has referred 188 of about 4,000 such complaints to the Customs and Excise Department. Stephanie Choi, TVB News.
RTHK says it will resubmit a funding application for its new headquarters in Chung Kwan-O. The request was rejected by lawmakers earlier. Stephanie Choi again.
After meeting with members of the RTHK Program Staff Union, Roy Tang stressed RTHK has been working hard to try to lower the price tag of its new headquarters. Last month, the LegCo Public Works Subcommittee rejected the $6 billion proposal, which far exceeded the original $1.6 billion estimate. The cost of the project was later lowered to $5.3 billion, but lawmakers are still against it.
We believe we should be given a chance of resubmitting the project to the PWSC, not only to explain our reduced budget to the LegCo members, but also to put things on record, because we believe this is a very important decision for Hong Kong in terms of the development of public service broadcasting.
Tang vowed to try to do his best to make sure existing facilities are renovated and, if possible, include new facilities to increase production hours and to ensure the quality of programs. Bao Choi, spokeswoman for the RTHK Program Staff Union, hopes management should be firm in presenting their case while resubmitting the proposal for funding. She adds, meanwhile, the staff union will discuss possible action. Choi also hopes the public will back RTHK. Pro-establishment lawmaker Wong Kwok-hing, who earlier opposed the funding request, said the Commerce and Economic Development Bureau should re-evaluate the scale of the project. And legislator Ronnie Tong, who was in favor of the funding application, is asking the government to do a better job in persuading lawmakers. Stephanie Choi, TVB News.
The Winter Olympics are set to begin in Sochi, Russia tomorrow, but competitions are already underway. And as James Aiken reports, protests against the Games and major sponsors are also in full swing.
After the longest ever journey for an Olympic torch, the flame has finally arrived in Sochi. And now the Games can begin. And they have. Competition for several events officially started 32 hours before the opening ceremony. But as Olympic organizers flash the hardware that the 3,500 Olympic athletes are vying for, human rights groups around the world already have their campaigns in high gear. Major Olympic sponsors are being targeted as demonstrators turn up the pressure against Russia's gay propaganda law restricting gay rights activities. Amnesty International has recruited major star power for its message of political tolerance, including the 2 recently released members of the Russian band Pussy Riot, who served time on charges of hooliganism.
What we have to remember is that there's thousands of other prisoners of conscience that are still in the dark and that we have to focus on.
The message also made it into the first address by a United Nations Secretary General to an International Olympic Committee session.
We must all raise our voices against attacks on lesbians, gays, bisexual, transgender, or intersex people. We must oppose the arrest, imprisonment, and discriminatory restrictions they face.
Ban did commend the IOC and Russian President Vladimir Putin for their commitment to peace, unity, and development through sport. Ban's visit to Sochi comes after several world leaders decided to skip the Games, including the leaders of the U.S., Germany, and France. President Xi Jinping headed for Sochi today, and he'll be on hand for the opening ceremony tomorrow. Meanwhile, already tight security is even tighter now after a warning from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Airlines flying to Russia have been warned about toothpaste tube bomb threats, which intelligence suggests might be used to hold explosives. James Aiken, TVB News.
The Vatican is facing scathing criticism by the United Nations for its systematic protection of priests who sexually abuse hundreds of thousands of child victims. The UN is now demanding that all known or suspected abusers face immediate prosecution outside of the Vatican.
It's a devastating blow to the Vatican. The UN Committee on the Rights of the Child insists the Catholic Church cared more about its reputation than protecting those raped and molested for decades at the hands of clergy.
The Holy See has adopted policies and practices which have led to the continuation of the abuse by and the impunity of the perpetrators. The Holy See has consistently placed the preservation of the reputation of the Church and the protection of the perpetrators above children's best interests.
Such a damning report puts the Catholic Church on notice.
They will have to prove to the world, to the Catholic world in particular, that they are committed to putting procedures in place that will protect children in the future.
The UN report demanded that the Vatican immediately remove all known or suspected abusers and turn them over to civil authorities. Such news had SNAP, the U.S. survivors network of those abused by priests, encouraging swift action.
So now more than ever, it's important for law enforcement to step up and protect the children and prosecute these crimes.
SNAP also wants church officials who protected the priests prosecuted. The Vatican responded by saying it would carefully consider UN recommendations, but it is committed to defending and protecting the rights of the child. David Lorenz remains scarred after a priest sexually abused him as a teenager.
What I'm hoping for is that civil authorities will see this and say, the Vatican isn't going to do it. They look at it and they say, maybe we need to do something.
But he's confident his scars will heal once pedophile priests are brought to justice.
Still ahead in our newscast, the Hung Ye cooked to flex its muscles in upcoming elections. Travel chaos in London due to underground workers' strike. And Real Madrid impressive in the Copa del Rey.